Well, good afternoon, Wales. What a week. What a week in politics. Unbelievable election result in America. Unbelievable. You know, I was watching the result. It took my mind straight back to 2016 when Donald Trump won for the first time. And I remember after that result, somebody called Hillary Clinton sat down and wrote a book called What Happened? And I got the book and I read it and I got to the end and I realized she still doesn't know what happened. And it's the same here. I spent much of the last 72 hours, I have to admit, on X, on Twitter, watching Rory Stewart, Alistair Campbell, Emily Maitlis, James O'Brien, just completely and utterly blindsided by what ordinary people are thinking and feeling and worrying about out there in the country. And one of the things that struck me while watching all of this is even today, nearly a decade on from the vote for Brexit, nearly a decade on from that first vote for Donald Trump, from California to New York to Rome to Paris, the liberal establishment don't understand what's happening around them. They don't get it. They don't understand it. This is what happens when you ignore millions of ordinary people. And whatever you think about the Donald, whether you like him, whether you don't, whatever, this is what happens when you not just ignore ordinary people, but you deride them, you insult them, you berate them, you call them Nazis, you call them fascists, you call them garbage. This is what happens when you obliterate the working class through globalization and big firms that send the jobs to China to benefit from cheap migrant labor, while the same liberal elites here bring in uncontrolled migration just to allow companies to keep their costs low, their profits high, and to satisfy the sense of moral righteousness of the likes of Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell and Emily Maitlis. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. I mean, after 2016, I hoped that the people who dominate the most important and influential institutions in our society would understand that they need to compromise. They need to meet people in the middle. And instead, what they did is they jammed more mass immigration, more broken borders, more tax, more regulation, more woke ideology, more gender gobbledygook down the throats of ordinary people. They just doubled down. And that is why, from America to the UK, to France, to Germany, to Italy, to the Netherlands, millions of ordinary people are saying, actually, we're not going to put up with this anymore. We're going to push back and we're going to get our voice back into the institutions, back into this national conversation. Because like in America, if you look at Wales, if you look at England, if you look at Scotland, you look at Northern Ireland, it's the same story here. Millions of ordinary people have simply had enough. They've had enough of a Labour government. I call it a government, but it's a student union society. That's what it is. It's a student union society. They've had enough of a Labour government clobbering working people with the highest tax burden that we've had in our history. They say they're not taxing working people. Anybody who has ever run a business knows that's exactly what they're doing by raising taxes like national insurance contributions. They're clobbering people with regulation. They're borrowing tens of billions of pounds, which our children and their children are going to have to pay off for decades to come, all to get to growth rates of 1.5%. I mean, the economics of this simply don't make sense. They're doing this at the same time, this Labour government and much of the political class, because it isn't just Labour. They're doing this while giving us what I call a Deliveroo economy. They're flooding our economy with low wage, low skill, cheap migrant workers from outside of Europe, most of them, who are good people. They want a better life. But they're taking more out of the national economy than they're putting in. Even the Office for Budget Responsibility, a big player in the blob, has admitted that each low-skill, low-wage migrant in this country is costing the British taxpayer between £150,000 and £1 million. It's a net fiscal cost. All of the studies that we've got from the Netherlands, from Denmark, from France say the same thing. If you want to drive prosperity, if you want to build a dynamic economy, this is the wrong way to go about it. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. There is no incentive for big businesses to create, to innovate, to be dynamic if you're endlessly supplying them with cheap labour. It doesn't make sense. It's bad economics. And it's not just the Labour Party. Labour and the Conservatives are clinging to the same broken, failing consensus, like people clinging to a lifeboat as the Titanic sinks around them. Big state, big regulation, big taxation, big immigration, big on London, big on the university class, big on everybody and anything except ordinary people. That is the elite consensus. Big on censorship, big on restricting, not opening up the public square, and big on dismissing and deriding ordinary people instead of treating them with the respect and the decency that they deserve. And one of the remarkable things that is happening, many people are aware of it, they don't quite understand the extent to which this is happening. But one of the things the new elite class do, it's very clever, is when you ask questions about these issues, when you say, why can't we control our own borders? Why can't we lower migration? Why can't we build an economy that works for small towns, for places outside of London? Why can't we keep our children safe and secure? They say, you're misinformed. It's misinformation. It's the new buzzword. You ask these questions, they say, sorry, you're misinformed. We need to ask BBC Verify. And here's the thing. What they're doing at the same time is they're blaming you for misinformation while keeping information from you. What my Gen Z students would say, they're gaslighting you. And I'll give you some examples. If you want to see arrest rates in this country by citizenship, by nationality, immigration status, country of origin, they won't give it to you. They've got it, they've got the information, but they won't give it to you. If you want to see welfare claims by nationality, immigration status, country of origin, they won't give it to you. They can get it, but they won't give it to you. If you want to see information on tax credits, if you want to see information on repeat offending, if you want to see detailed information on housing and accommodation costs, they've got it. They won't give it to you. What they'll do is they'll say, you're an idiot for asking these questions. You're misinformed. Everything here is rosy. Please move along. Well, I've had enough, which is why last week I joined with Reform's 5 MPs to launch a national campaign to demand that Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, and the Labour government make this information available to the British tax-paying public. Because as we said in the letter to Keir Starmer, you'll get it online, you can't blame people for misinformation while deliberately hiding things from them. If you're so confident that mass immigration is good for the economy, if you're so confident that mass immigration is keeping us safe and secure, if you're so confident that the people who are entering our country are not undermining and damaging our country, then give us the information. Let us see it for ourselves, because I'm willing to bet that the reason they're not giving us that information is because they know exactly what that information is going to show. It's going to show us the same things it shows us when governments do make that data available, like people in Denmark, or France, or Germany, or Italy, which is that actually mass immigration is not leading us to this sort of lovely paradise where we all sit on top of a rainbow and say, wow, what a wonderful society we're living in. Actually, what mass immigration is pushing us into is managed decline. That is what is happening. As I say to people in Westminster, look at the global picture. 2 countries to consider, Canada and Sweden, notoriously the most liberal, tolerant societies on earth. I used to live in Canada. They used to be so supportive of this experiment with mass immigration. In Sweden, you cannot find anybody on the left or the right today who says this has been a good experiment that has made their society stronger. And in Canada, Justin Trudeau just had to go on X and say, I'm sorry, everybody, we can't carry this on because it's causing too many problems. The only people who haven't realized this happen to be the very people sitting in number 10 Downing Street. Legal immigration needs to be dramatically reduced. It needs to be completely slashed. We need an immediate freeze on all non-essential migration. And illegal migration is much worse because it violates the sense of fair play that runs through these islands, that ultimately defines who we are. If you look at what is happening with the small boat crisis, 146,000 people entering the country illegally, making a mockery of our claim since the vote for Brexit to be an independent, self-governing, sovereign nation. A nation that cannot control its own borders is not a serious nation. A government that cannot keep its people safe is not a serious government. But the thing that makes this crisis particularly hard to swallow is we've just taken winter fuel payments off pensioners to save £1.5 billion. We've just smashed family farms to save about £1.8 billion. Our illegal migration crisis is currently costing us around £18 billion. So when I hear Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer saying they're solving this crisis, I don't laugh anymore. I'm absolutely outraged. Because they're not doing that at all. Anybody who is of value and significance in the border security world, anybody who knows what they're talking about, knows that Labour's strategy is not going to make a difference, much like smashing the gangs has not made a difference in the war on drugs for the last 50 years. What you're doing, what Labour are doing, is dealing with the symptoms. They're not dealing with the underlying issue. And to make matters worse, they're even incentivising others to come. What Yvette Cooper has just done, I mean, it is mind-boggling. Aside from smashing the gangs being a modern equivalent of whack-a-mole, where you get rid of one gang and another one pops up because guess what, all you need is a dinghy, you're never going to eradicate the problem through that strategy. You're never going to eradicate it through intelligence. They've also just given asylum to tens of thousands of people who have broken our laws, entered our country illegally, And you might as well put a big flashing neon sign on the White Cliffs of Dover saying, come on in, we're a soft touch. There is no disincentive, there is no deterrent for people to make the journey. So of course the numbers will continue to go up and up and up. And when they say, well, what's your answer? It's very clear. We need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. I mean, we need to reform and repeal the Human Rights Act. We need an active deterrent. And more than anything, we need people in politics who understand that the priority in this country is not deferring to international courts, but keeping the British people and our children on these islands safe and secure. Because one of the things that I've been pointing out for quite a while, which nobody seems to be able to explain to me why these things are happening, the absolute outrageous cases of people who have been using the ECHR to stay in this country after breaking our laws. I'll give you one example. An illiterate Iraqi goat herder who came to Britain claiming asylum, joined an organised gang made up of other refugees and illegal migrants, moved to Aberystwyth, started dealing cocaine and heroin and getting our people addicted to drugs, while opening sweet shops and taxi firms to launder their money. Those people should not be in our country. The one that really gets me, though, is the case of an Albanian who came into this country, decided that he'd break into a house, was arrested for burglary, was given 2.5 years, served 6 months. We put him on a plane, deported him out of the country. He smuggled his way back into the country illegally and then used the ECHR to stay in the country. You cannot make it up. It's absolutely outrageous. So we need to leave the ECHR. We need to reform, if not repeal, the Human Rights Act. We need an active deterrent, and we need people in politics who understand the extent to which ordinary, hard-working, tax-paying people in this country are sick of being taken for a ride. And, you know, I sound angry and exasperated because I'm exactly like you. I am utterly frustrated and fed up with what is happening to the country that we love. And I was thinking on the train down here today, you know, my family come from South Wales. My grandmother was the first woman to win one of the big prizes at the Eisteddfod, Megan Thomas. And she was so good at singing. She used to sing for the soup kitchens to raise money during World War I. And then she was picked from a village. She'd never gone abroad before, but she was sent to India to go and sing for the troops in World War II, which is where she met my grandfather, and they had my mother, and they stayed together for the rest of their lives. And I think about them a lot at the moment because, like your ancestors, these were people who saw the best, not the worst, in our country. And these were people who understood the importance of playing by the rules, working hard. They understood fairness. They understood how to build a business. They understood what it meant to come from these islands and what a privilege it is. And I didn't think I'd ever say this, but I'm quite glad that they are not able to see the country today and the things that are happening to this country today, because I think they'd be absolutely shocked and appalled by what the people who claim to speak for us are doing in our name. And you have to remind yourselves, when you think about people that you love and the things that your families have gone through, you have to think seriously about what is it that actually distinguishes people like us in a room like this from most of the people in Westminster. I would suggest there are two things that separate us from them. The first is, we believe that the true source of power, authority, and legitimacy lies with the people. We believe that it's the people, it's the principle of popular sovereignty that should guide our politics. We do not believe that the true source of power, legitimacy, and authority lies with other members of the elite class, because that's what they believe. They believe the most important relationship in politics is horizontal. It runs from one group of elites to another group of elites. We believe the most important relationship in politics is vertical. It runs from the people up to the people that we elect to represent us and to speak on our behalf. That's the difference. And there's a second principle that I think differentiates this movement from the uniparty Conservatives and Labour and much of Westminster. And that's the principle of national preference. I think we believe that when it comes to the economy, when it comes to housing, when it comes to culture, when it comes to our understanding of our history, our ways of life, when it comes to how we manage our borders, how we keep people safe, how we approach the big issues of the day, I think we believe that our assessments, our calculations, our decisions, our policies should be anchored in the principle that it's the members of this national community who should always be prioritized above and beyond everybody and everything else. And that is what the vast majority of people in Britain think. They'd like you to believe that this movement represents the fringe minority. But as we just saw in America, we represent the forgotten majority. We represent people that have routinely, consistently been underestimated. The people from outside London, the people who don't buy into this elite consensus that has delivered what we see around us in our country today. We're not afraid anymore of fighting back. We're not afraid. And Labour is so easy to dismantle at the moment because of everything that we're seeing. But just before I finish, want to say one thing about the Conservative opposition. And I use the word opposition loosely. Let me just say this. If you think that a Conservative party, led by Kemi Badenoch, who has never really said anything of meaning around the issue of immigration, has ruled out leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, has just appointed as her number 2 a Remainer who has also ruled out leaving the ECHR, and has just appointed as her number 3 somebody who in Boris Johnson's government presided over the liberalisation of the entire immigration system. If you think that party is serious about changing and taking on the broken, failing, disastrous elite consensus in this country, then I have a Trump Tower to sell you. It ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. The Conservatives, the Tories are not going to save this country. If you want proof of concept, look at the last 14 years. It is not going to happen. What is going to happen is this movement is going to inherit the same realignment that just put Donald Trump back into the White House. It is. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. For the last 10 years, I've been talking about this political realignment. If you think the Uniparty, Labour and the Conservatives are going to be competitive, if you think Kemi Badenoch's going to win the Red Wall, if you think she's going to win Wales, if you think the Uniparty is going to actually mobilise the forgotten majority in 2028-29, it is not going to happen. So my message to the country, if you're watching this, if you're from the forgotten majority, if you're from the working class, if you've watched all the things that you love be destroyed and desecrated, if you're absolutely fed up with our economy, with the way our culture and our ways of life and our values are being ridiculed and rejected by much of the elite class in this country, if you are sick to the back teeth of this elite class laughing at you, insulting you, berating you, not taking you seriously, looking only at London and people who come from the same schools and the same universities and hold the same narrow values as they do, stop wasting your time on the old political parties. They are done. They're done. The next 10 years are going to be about the disruptors. The next 10 years are going to be about people like you, saying we've had enough. It's time to change the system. It's time to go to work. Thank you very much.